The format today is as follows. Each candidate will have 5 minutes to introduce themselves and say basically why they would like to run, and as you would expect. It will be 5 minutes. It is timed. And it is by coin toss just a little while ago, and so Phil Miller will be the first candidate to speak. After the 5 minutes, we will have questions from the audience. I have a few set aside just in case you don't have some ideas, but I have a feeling this group will have a lot to talk about. Each candidate will answer each one of those questions, so they'll each have 2 minutes for each one of those. We want to make this very fair and balanced. So, Phil, take it away.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's very nice to be here in Chester Village West. I've been coming here every June for many years because our local Chester Deep River Essex chapter of the Chamber of Commerce meets here every June, and Marion is our most gracious host, and it's always nice to be here. And thank you all for coming today. I'm glad we could have a chance to meet like this with 4 days to go before a really important election. Some of you know that I've been the first selectman of Essex, and I'm in my 4th term. And as the first selectman, I've had to balance budgets, and this has been over the past 8 years. And I've also lived in a real world where we have to take care of our obligations in public service, and in fact, our reserves have been quintupled in 8 years, and we've maintained the discipline not to raid those reserves. I've made painful cuts necessary to fund local programs, and I know that for a long time all of us have struggled with the burdens from our property taxes being used to fund public education. It is among the most archaic and regressive taxes anywhere in America, and I even knew 8 or 10 years ago that every year, as we were almost ready to pat ourselves on the back because we could keep our tax increases to somewhere around 3 or 3.5%, and then we look at the fact that many of our seniors living on modest fixed incomes fall a little bit further behind the 8 ball every year, and so we decided to do something about it, and we convened people from different affiliations and backgrounds, and we came up with a program whereby we could match the state circuit breaker program. And so for our most 8 to 9 dozen in-need senior homeowners, they get a little bit of a break, and they're still contributing, of course, but just enough of a break to hopefully keep them in their homes. And one of the proudest things for me is that when we were shopping this plan around, one of the biggest supporters was Essex Meadows, our largest taxpayer, and whose constituents there would not benefit from this plan, yet they were only too happy to speak on behalf of giving just a little bit of property tax relief. With that in mind, many people this week are speaking about the governor's budget which has been proposed, and while it certainly is commendable on one aspect that it cuts $2 billion in concessions over the next couple years, my problem with it is that it doesn't address the problems we have with property tax reform. And I hope that you'll give me the opportunity to go up next Wednesday to Hartford to fight to reform property taxes. Many other states have many other revenue streams they use to help fund public education, and we need that kind of change as well. Many of you know that this is not a time for on-the-job training because there's too much at stake, because the challenges we have now are of a grander scale than we've really seen in some time. Some people in some parts of the state think that down here we're a little bit privileged or maybe a little bit wealthy, but yet you and I know the truth, and we know that many of our families and people struggle with the same problems that other people in Connecticut struggle with. And I can tell you that as the first selectman of a small town, we have nearly 250 people who are unemployed, and certainly hundreds more who are underemployed to some degree. I know these people, I know their struggles, and that's why I've really worked hard with our high-achieving nonprofit sector to try to make changes as well. And I know that some of you might find this surprising, but here in Middlesex County, one of the most well-to-do counties in America, we 5 years ago on a January night when the mercury hit 9 degrees did a survey throughout the county, and even after the shelters were full, we had over 120 people living out on the streets, more than 24 of them veterans. This obviously is unacceptable, and so there are good new initiatives now to build supportive housing, which is much cheaper than having the state foot the bill for people to care for people in need. So I hope to be able to have some good effect at making some of these changes. And I thank you all for coming, and thank you for your consideration.
We pass it over.
Do we have to sit or can I stand? Can I stand? Can you hear me? Hi everybody, my name is Janet Peckinpah and I am running in next Tuesday's special election to be your State House representative. Our district covers the towns of Chester, Haddam, Deep River, and Essex, all beautiful rural towns along the Connecticut River. Over the last 2 years, 100,000 people have lost their jobs in Connecticut. Thousands of small businesses have closed their doors. Our beloved state is in crisis, but the solution is simple. We need to cut the size of our government. We need to unburden our businesses so they can afford to stay here. We have a new governor, and for the first time in the history of our state, the executive, legislative branches, and all of our constitutional officers are all members of the same political party. There is no balance. For most of the last 20 years, one party has ruled the legislature and one party has gotten us into this mess. We need balance and reason and common sense. Yesterday, our new governor, Dannel Malloy, gave us his plan for a balanced budget. The budget passes on to us the largest tax increase in history. With a $3.5 billion budget deficit, many of us thought that Governor Malloy would present a major overhaul of government, but that didn't happen. There's more spending, $900 million more over the next 2 years. And to pay for that, our taxes will increase by $3.5 billion. Those taxes will affect every one of us in this room. For the last 2 years, many of you in this room who live on fixed incomes have had no cost of living increase in your Social Security checks. These new taxes add up. You are being asked to sacrifice even more. We'll be taxed when we get our hair cut, our car washed, our pooches clipped, we get a manicure, we buy underwear or new shoes, we purchase Tylenol, or take a yoga class. If we have a boat, every aspect of that will be taxed, of owning and caring for that boat. Marinas will have to close. We'll see boats worked on out of state. We'll see boats purchased out of state and possibly moved out of state with these new taxes. Our income taxes will go up with the new income tax brackets. The governor did not attempt to find much savings in government. He wants to consolidate 81 agencies into 57 and admits that will only save $10 million. There are 45,000 full-time state employees. They will be reduced by 150. I do applaud him for asking the unions to come up with concessions and for leaving funding in education intact. But what if the unions say no? Does that mean he's going to come back for even more taxes on us? Every department in this state can be trimmed without sacrificing essential services. Republicans have a plan to consolidate 43 agencies into 11, not just move agencies around or blend them into one building, but they will eliminate services that are duplicated, and that will be a huge cost savings. This will happen and your taxes will not be raised. We are in a dire situation. We cannot afford to ask our citizens who are out of work, 400,000 in Connecticut right now, who have given up looking for work because they can't find it. 170,000 people are looking for work. 400,000 others aren't. I am not a politician. I have worked hard my entire life, and I am frustrated, and I am angry, and that's why I say no more of what's happening in Hartford. I stepped forward and I pledged to you today to call for legislators to step forward and take a 10% cut in pay and benefits immediately. Perhaps if this happens, people in other agencies and parts of state government will follow. We have to shrink our government. If you elect me next Tuesday, I will go to Hartford to stand up for you, to represent you, to vote against this budget, to fight these new taxes. No more business as usual. We need a fresh voice and a fresh perspective. My name is Janet Peckinpah, and I ask you to please vote for me next Tuesday, and I will work hard to give you the kind of government you deserve, to continue to make this a wonderful place to live. Thank you.
Yeah, we do that. Yeah.